Yes.
About everything we're going.
Yes.
In about an hour.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Perfect. All right, it's go time in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to G Money Real Talk on everything mortgages and real estate. Today I'm here with Cami Pinsak,
You got it.
broker and owner of Realty One Group Summit here in Ventura, and outgoing president of the VCCAR. Welcome.
Thank you. See, I'm surprised that you didn't say Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors, but that's quite a mouthful.
That was quite the mouthful. I'm going to have to go with the industry standard And just do the acronyms. That's all I could do. Pronunciation of some of those words may be a little difficult on my end.
I can't tell you how many times I've stumbled over it this last year.
Yeah.
It's just a lot.
Yeah. Well, you are the pinnacle of the local real estate, and it's quite an honor to have you here today, and I appreciate you. You don't get here by chance, so, I mean, I'm reading your bio, and I want to hear it firsthand from you. How do you get to where you are, especially from Germany?
Well, I had nothing to do with Germany.
Okay,
That was all.
well.
That happened to me. That's just where I was born.
Sure.
So I don't even think it's in my bio, but I was a preemie.
Oh.
I probably should have died. I think they told my dad, you have a lovely baby girl if she lives through the night.
Oh, my goodness.
In Germany at that point in time. I don't want to tell you the exact year because that would give away
I'm not, it's
too many
okay.
things. But it was when being 5 weeks premature was a lot more lethal than it is now.
Yeah.
Right.
We have twin daughters, 9 years old, and twins don't go full term.
Yeah.
So they were premature and NICU experience. I get it. It's very tense, very emotional, very, one was 4 pounds, 7 ounces, and one was a little over 5. And yeah.
And I was on the smaller side of your daughters.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that time. So, but, of course, that's when, my mom was smoking a cigarette and having a cocktail before labor.
well, that's what you did back then, right? You got to ease the tension.
You just didn't know what you didn't know.
Right?
So, my dad was an airline pilot.
Okay.
He flew for Pan Am. I don't know if a lot of our listeners are going to even remember Pan Am.
They'll know Pan Am. Yeah.
The epitome of international travel in the heyday.
Yeah.
And so he was stationed in Berlin at that time. And so that's where I was born.
Wow.
Not an Army brat, but an airline brat.
That's great.
Yeah.
Did you grow up there in Germany?
I did. And then we came back to the United States. Then we moved back to Germany. And when I was 8, we moved to California permanently.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Any German speaking ability?
Funny story.
Okay.
It was my first language.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right? And I can still understand some of it. But a couple of things, like when we came back to the States, my parents put me into German school. It's what every tween wants to do is be singled out for your differences and go to a school on Saturday to maintain a language. Yeah. I hated it,
Of
right?
course.
So I just rejected that. I wanted to be just like all of my friends. And so I kind of lost that. I took French in high school. Then when I went to college, I thought, I'll take German, right?
Okay.
This will be an easy A. I kid you not, I got a C in pronunciation.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, screw you. Just because, I was born there, were you? And you're telling me I can't pronounce this correctly. So then I went back to French.
Yeah. Well,
And I don't remember that anymore either. So.
My parents were divorced. My mom remarried for 14 years. My stepdad owned Mexican restaurants. And so, yes, I took Spanish all throughout high school. And I did, I maybe did B's and C's. It was average, but really what they teach you and the phrasing, it's not every day. And so working actually in the restaurants, more of the slang terminology and pronunciation, that's where I got better. And so, and then it's also, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so, like, again, I was sharing earlier, hey, I'm enough to be dangerous, a little Spanglish here and there. I can communicate what I want. Probably not the best conjugation, but you have to really use it to keep sharp.
Yes, I worked in the restaurant business as well, so I had that Spanglish, and I just used to get giggles and giggles and giggles when I would inadvertently swear
Oh,
because I thought I was saying, that thingy, but I was not.
of course. Yeah. And some choice words,
Yes.
right? Good. So let's start out. I mean, how do you get even just to the broker owner of real estate?
I think a lot of things that happen in careers, looking back, are a little bit of luck and naivete. I was working in a Keller Williams franchise, and that franchise dissolved. And there had been some investment in the office building at that time, and my business partner at that time, had invested. So the brokerage, the people who were leading the brokerage decided to become independent. And I became a part owner in that. It was a great experience. It was difficult. There were many, many chiefs. And the opportunity to own a franchise came up for $1.
Oh, okay.
So jumped on that.
Yeah, right?
Did not know anything about what was going on. Jumped on that, and then kind of disaligned with my partner about, I don't know, 5-6 years in, and have been the sole owner since.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of doing that on a day-to-day basis, and I love teaching.
Yeah.
I really believe in the quality of the transaction, as opposed to just churning and burning,
Yes.
which is not always the most profitable, but it definitely is a quality transaction,
It's the most prosperous long term.
long term.
And that's, what I'm always been about is doing the best job that I can, really focusing on the client experience, those touch points, streamlining as much as I can, not, alleviating as much of their stress onto me as I can. Maybe I'm overbearing here, but it's just, again, I always say this, my first home purchase took me 3 years. Prior to getting into the mortgage business, I didn't have that. Let me sit you down and guide you. Let me ease it. Let me explain it. And so I was petrified. You just see a fee sheet a mile long of fees and a payment that you're scared of. And it's like, how am I going to do this? So I really put myself in those shoes of, if I can do it, you can do it. And here's how we kind of do that. So.
Yeah, I'm always reminded of, buyers and sellers, they just don't know what they don't know.
Yes.
You can read, you can, have a PhD in the internet, but until you go through it, you really still just don't know.
Yeah.
Right? When my husband and I first wanted to purchase a home, we walked into a FSBO.
For sale by owner.
Yeah, thank you. And, way before I was in real estate. And my husband said, we love your house. We want to make an offer. And the guy said, okay. And then we just kind of looked at each other.
Now what?
And walked out. And we don't know what the hell we're doing, And of course, we never bought that house. But it did start we need some professional guidance here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the real estate side, not only do you sell and list and do all of those activities, but you're managing many realtors above you, which again, that hat is, I'm going to say, probably very challenging. To do well in the industry, you have to have, I'm going to say, a good sense of confidence and some. There's a fine line between confidence and cockiness, and you have to work with many different personalities and sales approaches and things like that. So what are some of the obstacles that you find, wearing that broker hat?
So wearing the broker hat, I came from restaurant management. So the management piece was not as difficult for me. And I love to teach. I love to, share the way things can be in a transaction through my experience, through my knowledge, throwing myself under the bus, everything I've done wrong. But I think what, being a broker these days is really, really a thankless job. It's managing independent contractors where you really can only have a limited say in how they do their business. But yet the Department of Real Estate says you are responsible for everything they do.
Right.
And that is a very fine line. And on top of that, agents coming and going is a very real thing. So
Yeah.
you are constantly, there's retention, there's training, there's oversight,
Yeah.
alongside, being, I have a director of operations. Love you, Erica. I always say, like, she runs the business. I just write the checks.
Okay.
Right? She is a godsend.
Yeah.
Because that would be impossible to do without her.
Well, any successful business is going to have a team, and you have a great team to support you, it sounds like. And yeah, that's great. So with that, not only are you wearing these hats of salesperson, broker, managing, you also wanted to get yourself involved in the political advocacy side of that with the VCCAR. Share, how did that evolve?
I've always been wanted to be in kind of the thick of things. So even when I was a stay-at-home mom prior to real estate, I was the PTA president. I
Right.
was involved because I figured that would make a better experience for my children.
Yeah.
That would be my job, my advocacy for my children. And getting involved with CAR, with the association locally, was a little bit of, I want to be more involved because I don't understand and I don't really love what I'm seeing, right? We have evolved so much as an association since we've had our new association executive for the last 8 years. She's not new. And that's how I wanted to get involved. And I will tell you, I ran for the board and I lost. That was kind of a shot to the ego.
Yeah.
Right? And so the next year came around and I said, well, do I want to do this again? Because that kind of hurt. That hurt my feelings. And I thought, which would I rather? Would I rather run again and lose again? At least then I would know.
Right.
Or just always wonder what if. And
Yeah.
so I ran again. I campaigned this time. And I did make it on the board.
Wow.
Then I was asked to travel to California Association of Realtors, and that's really where the advocacy piece kind of fell into place. I fell in love with it. I 100% believe one of Rob's quotes that he always says is if real estate is your business, then politics is your passion. There isn't a piece, and even with mortgages, not a piece of the transaction that is not legislated in some way.
Right.
Right? So it benefits all realtors to know as much as possible about the legislation in each state because it makes you more credible with your clients.
Yeah.
And that's really where it came. I just fell in love with it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I commend you on the courage to run a second time. It's like I always put myself, hey, would I do that? And you believed in it enough, but you also, when you get knocked down, you have to learn from those experiences. What did you learn? You needed to go campaign, and it's not just the people that that love you. You have to go out and meet those that don't know you, that don't love you, and really kind of show what you're all about. And so good job there. And then, our listeners are not just in the real estate profession. So these are, first-time buyers, or maybe they don't own a home. Just a little bit of a clarification. So the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors
Good job.
is the local board that supports Ventura County. And then there's the CAR, which is the California Association of Realtors. And then there's the NAR, the National Association. There's acronyms everywhere. I apologize. But just so you understand the hierarchy of some of the points that she has made and how she's gotten more and more involved in that.
And what you're talking about, it's called the three-way agreement, right? So if a broker locally belongs to the association locally, then they also must belong to the California Association of Realtors and also must belong to National Association of Realtors.
Yeah.
And to be clear, there may be brokers who are not involved with NAR, CAR, and the local board, but they cannot call themselves realtors.
Correct. And that was also a distinction that I was going to make. So, what makes somebody a realtor versus a real estate professional or whatever salesperson, name, whatever designated title they want, they have to be part of the association.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and there's been a lot. I mean, I've been in here again 24 years in the lending side, and I don't want to say I'm getting older and grumpier, but it's kind of like I'm seeing more and more of these laws and pressure being put on us, and I'm like, if I don't like something, I need to be able to stand up and make a change. I was even at city council last night. I'm just getting more and more into the politics of it, and I'm not a huge fan of politics, but it's like, again, you have to be an advocate for your profession and speak up. And I think that there's many housing laws, and we can kind of we'll roll through here in a little bit of some of the upcoming stuff, but like a lot of the laws that I feel are being implemented, I scratch my head and I go, do they even consult with lenders? Like if we look at even new construction and what's being built, I mean, look around. We're very scarce in Ventura County. So this may be an anomaly. We're not Texas where you have, millions of acres of land that you can just build these beautiful single family residences. What we have is buildings that are sandwiched on top of buildings, and it's either apartments or condos. And on the home ownership side, condos are one of the most difficult to lend on. They're also one of the more expensive, just with the vetting that we have to go through, as well as even the cost to the consumer with some additional closing costs with the HOA condo questionnaires and some of the. It's just like, so its appearance on the outside often is that, we're building all these units and it's really helping, but I'm looking at the financial bottom line and I'm just scratching my head saying like, is this really in the best interest of the consumer? I don't know, so that's where I have to be more and more outspoken and communicate this on the podcast, and hey, maybe get into the politics one day of like, hey, when they're going to approve different, tracts of homes that, is this the best fit for that location, for that area? So
I think it's so interesting because one of the reasons that we have such an issue in Ventura County, as you probably well know, is SOAR.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember, because I only moved to Ventura County in '99. So up until recently, I considered myself a carpetbagger. But when that was being voted on, I was like, holy moly, until 2050, like we're making legislation for our children.
Yeah.
Right. So it was kind of crazy. And don't get me wrong, I love the open space. I love seeing all the agriculture. We really are now kind of in this in between, like that's great, but we don't have enough housing. And then, we have these RHNA numbers, which is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. I think that's what it stands for.
Yeah, I believe so.
But the cities are mandated to create housing that meets these numbers. And that comes down from the state, or otherwise there are consequences. So in many areas, there is not any ability to go anywhere but up.
Yeah.
Right?
Reasonably so. But, there's also, and I'm just going to say some of the side effects of that is, you're probably aware, it's more and more common to have multi-generations per home now, right? We have grandma, we have the grandbaby, we've, multi-generations, and that's, housing is tough, housing is expensive, and, I see that. So when you're building that, and I understand the dynamic to go up, and California has these laws where we don't have to take parking into account anymore, which is now congesting our streets. And so like, hey, if we can go up, let's build a parking garage, maybe a few stories high that needs to accommodate. It used to be, 2 parking spots or 2.5 per unit. Now, you almost need 4 per unit. There's just a lot of side effects that haven't been thought through that are very challenging, especially as you're building condos, right down the street here, Main Street and the Avenue, and we have all these units, and it just kind of overflows. I saw an accident there yesterday because of, the difficulties with the parking. So I'm griping a little bit. I'm just stating the challenges. I don't think there's ever a perfect solution. I just would love to have maybe more input in some of these decisions, especially locally.
I agree 100%. And, even our office is down on Front Street in Calorama. And there's
Yeah.
a big new 88, I think it's 88 units going in catty corner to
Yes.
us. And all of our parking is going to be gone. It's
Yeah.
already kind of diminished during the construction. And then a block further east from that is going to be another 65 unit development.
Yeah.
And while I don't begrudge the developers at all, the city has got to think about how people are going to park. They want to make that kind of a funk zone like Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Well, where are people going to park? Are you going to bust them in?
Yeah. And even for this location, we've only owned it since 2021. It was a hardware store for 93 years, very well known, very well established. They built, originally it was the home behind it. And so they added on this commercial building, and it effectively made it a zero lot line, which means we don't have any, parking, commercial parking. There's no planters. It's just up to our building is the sidewalk. And so the only parking we have is the street parking. And about a year or so where the city was doing the city plan, the proposal, and they even kind of marked it off and did a demo, was they wanted to turn our front parking, the street parking, into a bicycle lane. And I did have to get vocal at that point. You're trying to shut down businesses at that. And I care about bicycle safety. I'm an advocate. If you want to bike to work, by all means do it. I think that's great. We need to be as safe as we can. But to eliminate parking is, I think, how many bikes are going to go by that daily versus how many cars and how many parking spots we need. We've got to kind of weigh the benefits here, and it seemed a little lopsided in the pros and cons.
It's always such an interesting dynamic, and I feel like civil engineering, it just doesn't get enough credit because we need so much more of it to align the needs of the community with, what actually is happening day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so.
Well, before we dive into some of the new updates, let's, we're getting towards the end of the year. Really, our days are numbered here until 2025.
We're on the countdown.
Any reflections on 2024 that, you would like to talk about real estate wise?
Well, it was a lot. It was fascinating. I think I knew it was going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
We saw that the NAR, the Department of Justice, we saw all of that on the horizon. In our brokerage, we had been having mandatory buyer-broker agreements since the beginning of last year. So when it all came into play, it was nothing new for them.
Yeah.
And those conversations were not difficult for them to have with their clients. But that was a huge change in business for many, many realtors.
Retention-wise, how did you fare? We go from 21, 22, kind of the pinnacle of, volume down to the last 2 years, which has obviously been more challenging. I'm just going to self-reflect in the lending world. They say that we lost anywhere between 50 and 60% of lenders, originators rather. And then obviously with the regulation increases, there's a lot of merging of different lending institutes, banks buying out other banks and things like that. Did you feel similar impacts?
As a brokerage or as a real estate community locally?
Well, let's just say with, how many salespersons you have working underneath you. Was there a lot of turnover? Was there a lot of, leaving the industry and getting full-time jobs kind of to supplement the lack of business?
I don't think we had a lot of people leaving per se. We did have people who maybe were doing real estate as a part-time gig, not be able to really focus and get the ROI on their real estate career, and maybe go onto a referral basis. We did have that. So I think that as an industry as a whole, I think we saw a lot of people who were part-time kind of say, this is not for me.
Yeah.
It's a little bit too much for me to keep up with everything that's going on. I can't just dip my toe in, do a couple of transactions, and then, sit on the sidelines. you really have to be in the trenches doing this every day now to keep up with what's going on, or you could be faced with a lawsuit.
Yeah. I think, just ongoing, there's a lot of glorification on the outside. I hear the buzz from, oh, I just bought a house and it's so easy. When times are good, hey, I'm gonna quit being a cashier at Vaughn's and I'm gonna get my license and I'm gonna, and then there's also that, oh, if I can just do it part time, I'm gonna make so much more money. This is a full-time job, and those that think it's going to be a part-time, I would really challenge you to go interview some successful agents and talk to them about the challenges, the consistency, the presence that you need to have to stay in business and flourish. And it's one to have your license versus one to actually close deals, right? And so I don't know. I don't want to say I internally laugh about that all the time, but I do hear that buzz. And, when times are good, you hear it more and more. But I can attest this business is very challenging. And yes, it's very rewarding, but you earn, what it takes to become that. So
Ironically, as an association, we always budget for a certain amount of decline in membership, and we didn't quite have the decline that we thought. And every month we have new orientation classes. Everybody has to go through an orientation before they can call themselves a realtor.
Yeah.
And this last year, I have had the honor of being able to swear in so many new realtors.
Yeah.
And I really thought we would be, offering these classes maybe every other month.
Yeah.
No, every month. And there are still a consistent number of people wanting to enter the business.
And that could go hand in hand with just overall employment. People are staying on their jobs longer because they're concerned or there's challenges to find other employment. Mm-hmm. And so I think maybe the thought is maybe I don't quit my job, but I can supplement it with another job. I also follow, the DRE, Department of Real Estate. Always read their quarterly newsletter, and they always have the fun facts of how many applicants and new licensees and stuff. There has been a reduction for sure, but you're right. I mean, it's still pretty prosperous in terms of the new salesperson licenses.
Well, and the thing that I love about new salespeople is they don't know what they don't know. So all of these changes that are taking place, it's just learning something from the beginning for them. They don't know how it used to be.
Right. Right.
It's not a change. It's just learning it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Having a buyer-broker agreement, this is not new for new age. It is new for them, but it's not a change for them. It's just the way you do business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And then, that's kind of 24. How are you feeling? What are some of your predictions? What's your outlook on 25?
I think 25 is going to be better than 24.
Please.
Please, right? Which was better than 23.
Yes.
But I still think, consumers have short memories. And so when we had the very, very low interest rates, that is what everybody remembered. So when things went to, sevens and even higher, then people were freaking out.
Yeah.
And we know historically this is an average interest rate.
Yeah.
The thing that makes it difficult to swallow is the prices have also gone up. And that everybody keeps thinking, when are things going to fall? When are things going to fall? Well, I'm here to tell you, I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, I don't believe so either.
I mean, even, housing forecasts say that 4%, increase in value is going to be pretty standard for this next year. Yeah. And it's just because nationally, we're short 3.6 million housing units.
Right.
There's always going to be a demand.
Yeah. There's a few special things that I say about Ventura County. One, we're sandwiched between Santa Barbara and Malibu. And, it as a local or a native, it may feel you're being priced out, but we're still a bargain for, I don't want to say beachfront, but very close to the ocean.
We were before COVID.
But still, we look at the median sales price about $1 million. What is it in Santa Barbara? 1.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, or higher. Malibu's
Higher.
probably 2, so the value is there. What we have to understand is we're not Bakersfield, right? Bakersfield, you can buy a single family residence 3-2 all day long for 400,000.
Yeah.
But you're in Bakersfield. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand is, yes, it is difficult, but here's what I learned, and I'm not native to Ventura. I was born in the Central Valley. I moved here, relocated in 2010, and that was a result of the housing crisis at the time of, did I love what I do? Yes, absolutely. I need to go somewhere where I can do 1 or 2 loans a month and make a living and not have any worries. And that's kind of what I did, is I essentially chased the money a bit. Mm-hmm. I'm from Modesto, and the foreclosure crisis over there was top 3 in the nation for $400,000 home that couldn't even sell for $100,000. And so, there was challenges. And so, coming here, I just see that there's a whole lot more opportunities that we have, but there's also some challenges. And the challenges here is, we alluded to this earlier, we can't just go and build houses everywhere. We have regulations of how many homes, where we can build, where we cannot build, the types of homes that are being built. So it's perpetuating the problem of the housing need versus, and I'm not picking on, Kern County or Bakersfield, but Bakersfield, you have a lot more opportunity to, regulate the pricing there. With supply and demand, that's what we have. That's what's going to continue to keep the prices where they are. I get a lot of, misnomers that, the market's going to drop. And it's like, let's go back to history and look at what caused such a crash. There was a multitude of factors compounding together. It was an anomaly.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, if I could even say that. I'm not even going to try it again here. So, not to say it could never happen again, but I feel like there's a lot more regulations in place to protect us as an industry, to protect the consumers that, don't sit on the couch and expect a crash. And it's funny, just even preparing for today, I was reading an article this morning where 36% of consumers are expecting a crash and almost wanting that. And it's like, they wanted, of course, selfishly to help get the prices down and more affordable, but that's just not the take. I mean, it's not the case. It's not possible. And so, without the higher interest rates that we have now, presently they're near 7%. As of today, 6.93 for a 30-year fixed. In the grand schemes, it's not outlandish. It's just, again, going back to the problem that we have is we have many consumers that have owned for several years that had an opportunity to either buy or refinance into sub 3% rates. It's put a stalemate and added pressure onto the current market. And, I get it all the time that people are making choices, not to move, not to sell, which is also kind of challenging in today's market. It limits the homes available. So, it's just this whole cycle of what we're in, and I'm curious to see how everything unfolds. Even, without getting too technical, I was just, hey, we're going to talk about 25. What a great opportunity. What are the mortgage rate forecasts for 2025? And again, as of today, 6.93%. The average projection by the end of 2025 is 6.34. And that's over, a dozen or more: Redfin, CoreLogic, Wells Fargo, MBA, Fannie Mae, Moody's, Morgan Stanley, Realtor.com, Goldman Sachs, NAR. There's some as low as 5.8, but there's some as high as 6.8. So, I think getting it down 0.5% or 1% is definitely going to help grease the wheels here. But we have to be cautious with that, because the lower the rates, the higher the demand, and that's going to push the prices higher. Yeah. And so a lot of consumers don't understand that correlation of, I wish it was 2.75. Well, our median home price would be 1.5, So you have to be careful what you wish for. And so, ultimately the sentiment is, as soon as you can buy, do it. As soon as you can get in, do it, because you have this asset And if you can afford it at 6.93 or 6.5%, when the rates do come down to where you want, it's only going to help that affordability.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that there are, hopefully there are going to be some things in the future that help home affordability in nationally and in California. I think one would be, again, this could be controversial, but the SALT tax. I mean,
Yeah.
I think having some more exemptions on that would be great, as
Yeah.
opposed to just the $10,000 ceiling.
Yeah.
Also, we go to Sacramento and we go to Washington, D.C. every year, and we lobby with our legislators. And one of the things that I've heard bipartisan support for, but I haven't seen much movement on, is the increase in the capital gains exemption. It just has not kept up
It
with
really has not.
inflation, and that is keeping people in their homes that no longer serve them.
Yeah.
Right? People who need one-story homes, but they can't move because they've owned it and they own their home free and clear, and it's worth $1.2 million.
Yeah. And I've even had, within the last few months, conversations with my wife on that exact same thing. Hey, babe, I know we just bought this in 2019, but we're at our $500,000 max capital gains for a primary residence.
Yeah.
Do we sell? It's just, it poses questions and thoughts, and it will put, some homeowners to stay and put for that very reason. And I think as long as I've been in this industry, I think it's been those numbers. I mean,
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So let's we've alluded to some of these NAR updates, but I want to kind of see how some of them have played out. One of them you discussed earlier. So the biggest hot topic in the industry was the NAR lawsuits, settlements, and also kind of the change of how we do business as realtors and the commission structure and agreements that you have with the clients. You just a few moments ago said that you've had those agreements. Do you call them a listing agreement or not the listing?
The buyer broker agreement.
Yeah, thank you. So that is, to clarify, prior to a realtor showing you a home, the client has to sign an agreement, correct, that hires them, and it also puts down a commission percentage. It lays out the terms of what you're doing.
Correct. So prior to the NAR settlement, I can't tell you how many times that, I would ask agents, do you have a buyer broker agreement with this client? No, if they don't want to use me, that's fine.
They were scared.
But I think people just didn't believe enough in their value proposition, what they brought to the table. And primarily, when newer agents would come into the industry, they were assigned the role as a buyer's broker. And why? Because they didn't have to explain their value proposition, right? It was kind of a no risk for the consumer. In truth, I think the buyer's agent has so much responsibility and has to have so much knowledge about the process that really the ability to explain that value and explain consequences of not having a buyer's agent is just paramount. So that never happened. People were very uncomfortable having this conversation, but we just taught the agents to think of it as a listing agreement for your buyer, right? I'm going to invest X, Y, and Z time for you. I am going to help you navigate these things. Tell the story. I told my agents, tell the story of a transaction that went sideways for your buyers and how you help them through that, right? Some of the local things, the local ordinances we have, the sewer lateral here in Ventura and Ojai, you can't get that from ChatGPT.
Correct.
Right? And it's the experience that helps, navigate these buyers so that they are, I like to say, you're guiding your buyers down a red carpet, like the paparazzi, and you're shielding them from the paparazzi as much as possible to get them to the front door where you give them the keys, right? You can't shield them from everything, but that's your job, to get them down that red carpet with as little, with as few paparazzi being in their face and asking them the invasive questions. We want it to be proactive. The agent knows what to look for in a transaction, what could be red flags to shield the buyers from those things.
And I think it's great. I mean, it is having a tough or challenging conversation up front, but it's also creating expectations on both the realtor side, the consumer side, and it lays it out into writing. And to me, the more educational, the more informed a consumer can be, the better. So just putting that into writing, I think it will also make that relationship stronger. You'll learn right up front whether they're committed to you or not. And if they're not, then it's going to save you time. So why would you invest in somebody that they don't feel the same way about?
Correct. And I think that, the FHA changing the guidelines to allow concessions of what a normal compensation would be to be included as a concession has been a game changer as well. Because before, people were like, how are these people going to pay me? A lot of, especially in California, nobody has money for down payment and to pay a broker. It's a lot.
There was a lot of chickens running around,
fear,
not knowing, and that's also why I want to have this conversation. Is it's still new. It unfolded in August. The implementation. You've been doing those agreements, you said, for the past year or so. The other dynamic of this is the commission side. And that's where, I've seen it roll out and I've seen the good and the bad, and it's kind of what I thought at first. And I'm curious to see where it continues because in my opinion, and that's all it is my opinion, I feel like the lawsuit only focused on, and they have to, is this right for the listing agent to negotiate both sides of the commission? And, they didn't look at the alternatives of what are the alternative solutions. If the listing agent doesn't do this, how do we do this? And, there is a potential where the buyer would have to pay on their portion or a portion of that commission out of pocket. So it actually could, and I have seen it has increased their cash to close. And that's tough. I'm always fighting for the buyers. Obviously, I represent them in the process here, but I don't see a perfect solution. My expectation was a lot of realtors were going to write up contracts and try to keep everything pretty status quo, where, again, they could not advertise the buyer side commission. It had to be negotiated with the buyer's agent and the seller, if at all. And
I want to correct you. It's not negotiated by the buyer's agent. It's negotiated by the buyer and the seller. They are the two parties who are making that negotiation.
That is correct. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Just trying to visualize here, and I'm talking about
the agent's writing it up
Yes.
and guiding them,
Yes.
but the ultimate negotiation is between the buyer and the seller.
And so, just to clarify here, as I made a little typo, is the old-fashioned way was a listing agreement would go to sellers and negotiate a sales overall commission that they would then split between the buyer and the seller. And so the seller historically paid for the real estate commissions. With the new law that passed July, went into effect in August, essentially the listing agent and seller could only negotiate for their fees. And so as a buyer and buyer's agent came along, those had to independently be negotiated. And so my thought was to try to follow status quo, where maybe there were conversations on the listing side. Here's what to expect. I can't negotiate, but you should expect them to request this. Now that it's up for negotiation, I'm starting to see, and this is the national numbers, I know that the commissions have, I'm going to say in a perfect world, we see them at 6% and it was 3 and 3, but that was, historically, but we've seen those go down. And now that they're up for more of a negotiation, we have started to see them decline a little bit. I saw 2.41 was the latest average on the buying side. Now, whether that's accurate, whether that's local, I don't know. I'm just kind of quoting the national facts that I read. So you tell me, I mean, now that it's unfolded, am I high on those numbers? Have you seen the commissions come down? Have you seen more challenges with this new negotiation rule?
So, as president of VCCAR, I do have the onus of saying that we don't like to say anything is normal, average. We generally don't talk about specific numbers because that is how we all got into this trouble in the first place, because things were considered average and normal, and it was a foregone conclusion. And that's not the case. And that's one of the things that I actually really appreciate about these lawsuits. It has brought back the conversation with clients about, and there's more transparency about what happens. It kind of was, the man behind the Wizard of Oz, right? Nobody really knew how things worked, and agents were out there advertising that my services are free. And really they aren't.
Right.
They really never were.
Right.
It was always costing the buyer.
Yeah.
Right. So this is just a more transparent way. I have seen some compression in commissions. Compensations have always been negotiable. Always.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Always been negotiable. And it just now is a more open conversation, and one that people are having prior to going out and making an offer on a home. There are a lot more buyer consultations. I am seeing that those agents who are able to best give their value proposition and explain why you want to have representation are doing better with their compensation, right? If they are not able to give their value proposition, then they are, reducing their compensation.
Yeah.
It's just a negotiation with the buyer. There's also the situation where the buyer says, like, I don't have any extra money for this. At which point the agent can say, okay, I want you to get this house, and I can't work for free because that's gratuitous liability. I have the same amount of liability whether I work for free or whether I work for X% commission. And so I am going to remove my agency from this, and you can move forward as an unrepresented buyer with this client, with this house, if this is how you would like to, move forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Unrepresented buyers are tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough. I recently had a sale with an unrepresented buyer. It's very, very difficult, much more difficult than agents would think.
Yeah, I don't know that I have. What I'm and I have seen this. I've seen an uptick in buyers feeling compelled, whether to get the transaction or financially motivated, to go directly to the listing agent and then playing the dual agency role.
But that's kind of a misnomer, because the listing agent also has to individually negotiate their compensation with that buyer.
I agree, but they feel like that's their in to get their offer accepted. And also, hopefully, because the realtor is playing both sides, hopefully there's a better deal. I'm just saying, what I've seen. Now, I don't think that's the best move. I mean, playing dual agency, number one, the rule is you have to have your fiduciary responsibility to both clients, but that also puts a lot of negotiations at 50-50.
So I would say this, consumers, if you feel like you're going to get a better deal by going to the listing agent, why don't you just negotiate that same deal with an independent buyer's agent? That's a conversation that you could have.
No, thank you. That was very well spoken, and I appreciate that. No, and that's what we need to hear, is to make sure that you have your own representation, first and foremost. Yeah, absolutely. And also, for those that don't think realtors do a lot, they do a lot. They are fighting, they're advocating for you, they're protecting you, they're guiding you through the process. There's a lot of disclosures, there's a lot of protections, there's inspections that you're going back. It's not just the initial sales price that you're getting into. There's requests for repairs and help guide you through a home inspection and many, many things that they offer.
Buyer's agents save their clients thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. It's interesting, James Dwiggins of Next Home has come up with an app for buyer's agents. It's called Raise, and it is almost it in real time lets the buyer know exactly what the agent is doing on their behalf, whether it is scheduling inspections, showing homes, negotiating, talking, all of those things. And it's really keeping the buyers in the know on what their agent is doing on their behalf at all times. And that's how the value can be shown.
Yeah.
Right? So if you attach $1, a lot of people are saying like, buyer's agent, will there be an hourly rate? I would say, oh God, I hope so, because
we're going to get paid a lot, right?
people would get paid a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow. Well, that's implemented. That's, it's in the works. If you have questions, and you should, reach out to your local realtor and really have them go over some of these agreements with you and have them, kind of guide you and help you.
Well, also, it kind of brings us into one of the new laws for 2025 is AB 2992, which has mandated, and now it's statutorily necessary for a buyer-broker agreement in California for any real property.
Yeah.
So it is now going to be something that is standard. Agents don't have to be frightened of having that conversation because maybe one of their competitors is not going to be having that conversation. Everybody is going to be having that conversation.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Thank you. What are some of the other updates that have come out? I know there's been like ADU stuff recently. There was rent control that didn't pass. We have what else you got on?
well,
on the works?
so some of the really good ones for 2025. This is probably an interesting one. Besides AB 2992, which makes the buyer representation agreement statutory, the contractor exemption limit was raised from $500 to $1,000. So I think this is especially important for sellers, but for anybody, I think very few people knew that your handyman could only do $500 cumulative of work for you without really needing a contractor's license.
Yeah.
Right? Now it has been raised to $1,000. I think the realtors wanted it higher, but there were other factions that wanted to keep it low, probably the contractor's license.
And again, this goes back to you get what you pay for. I've done a lot of remodeling, whether it's this building, my home. I've used handyman that are not licensed, and I've used licensed contractors. And, there is, I'm going to say, a disparage in wage, rightfully so. Not only do they have to have their license, which they have, additional education and requirements, they have insurance requirements, they have, their knowledge. I don't even need to give an example, but I'm just saying to have a handyman, cap, I think is very appropriate. What you're not trying to do is have a handyman build a $50,000 deck. Correct. Or to build your roof on your home. Hey, if they're going to come in and fix some drywall and a few lights, I don't think they can do too much damage and mess that up. And I think that's appropriate to have a cap on there. People are wanting to save money, and I think if those that are listening, if you really penciled out in the long term what it cost you additional for the unqualified, unlicensed person, it's probably going to cost you more. At least anywhere I try to save, it costs me tenfold. So,
It really does. And we're painting with a broad stroke here, but it is important for the consumer to know that this has been raised now. It's $1,000. Kind of keeping up with inflation.
Yeah, $500 doesn't do anything anymore. No. So $1,000 doesn't do much of anything at all.
It's a visit to your house.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that also, if property owners found themselves in a situation where we had talked a little bit about the foreclosure crisis before, and some people said, well, I'm waiting for this to happen again. That's when I'm going to grab my great price. I'm here to tell you that people have so much equity in their home that this is probably not going to be a huge scourge like it was, a decade and a half ago. But if sellers found themselves in a situation where they weren't able to manage that property anymore through a job loss, whatever, There is new legislation. It looks like it's AB 2424 that says if you deliver a listing agreement, it would extend the foreclosure sale by 45 days. Right? So that's a good one for everybody to know.
Yeah.
Right? I think the most important thing is if you find yourself in that situation, please don't ignore the letters that come in the mail, right? Because you are risking all of the equity that you have in your house.
Yeah.
So that is a big one. There's also some really good laws in place now for tenants. We talked a lot about tenant protections here locally, but statewide there already are some great tenant protections. And now if anybody has ever made applications for different rental properties, those can quickly add up. And so there are some screening fee restrictions, AB 2493, that it says literally property managers and rental property owners either must return the screening fee to any applicant who is not selected for tenancy, or they provide the screening criteria to applicants at the time of the application, and then the first qualified person is chosen, right? And they only accept the payment at that time.
Got it.
Right? So this is something that we hear time and time again. It's too expensive. It's hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Well, they've put some restrictions in place for that. The other thing that tenants oftentimes have an issue with, and I know I've told my kids tons of time, take pictures before you move into a house and take pictures afterwards so you have that documentation. Well, now starting in April, anytime that you move out, the rental property owner must take pictures before they quote unquote fix anything that you damaged, and then they have to document what they any repairs as well.
Yeah.
So that's really good news for renters.
It provides clarification, rightfully so.
All of these things are just transparency.
Yeah.
You know.
So. I haven't rented a home in I can't tell you how long, but I recall as you were explaining this, receiving my deposit back, and they took some out, and I was like, "What did I do?" You know, I had the carpets cleaned, I had left it in great shape. Like, you know, they took out $100 and some for some cleaning fee, and you're like, "Okay, whatever."
Exactly. So these are some of the good things. I know that locally, we've been really working with local governments about tenant protection ordinances. California already has a really great tenant protection in place, right? And I know some of the municipalities want to have additional ordinances. And I think that our association really has tried to get out there and educate and collaborate with local municipalities about how we can do things better about enforcing the existing ordinances, as opposed to just adding on more ordinances that are going to be equally difficult to enforce.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, it seems on the surface like tenant protection max rent increases are good, but then also there's the dark side of that as well. Yeah. So there's pros and cons to both.
And it's challenging on both sides. You know, again, I haven't rented in many moons, but I do own rental properties, and it's like, you know, I'm knowing that there's laws in place, I'm petrified of like, hey, you know, I'd like to manage it myself. Where do I get the information? Do I have the correct forms? Am I aware of all the laws? You know, it's getting more and more challenging on both sides.
Well, and there are increasing costs for property owners, insurance.
Oh, yeah.
You know, for one.
Yeah.
So if the insurance goes up exponentially on this property, are you not able to pass it on in some way?
Absolutely.
Right? So these are things that we're just trying to educate about the pros and cons. And unfortunately, I have seen a lot more people exiting the rental business, right? Which affects then, you know, where are people going to rent?
Yeah.
So I think in Ventura County, we're at 50, well, I know in Ventura, we're at 56% home ownership rate.
Mm-hmm.
So California is quickly turning into a renter state.
Yeah, nationwide, I think the average of homeownership is just above 60. That's the average, 63% or something. Depending upon facts and years and all that, and where you get it. But
Well, we got to find some way for people to enter the home ownership, right? It's the key to generational wealth.
Absolutely.
It is, you have a stable payment. You don't have to worry about exterior forces, mandating where you live.
Oh,
So
you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
There's so many advantages to homeownership, and
we just got to get some more first time, buyer programs. The Dream for All program was amazing in the state, and I know that we preached it when we went to Washington
I did
D.C. And
several
if
of
we
them.
could do some kind of national program like that, that would be amazing.
my only critique, and I loved it, and I did several of them, and I think it really helped every buyer that I put through the program. It was 20% down, and if we look at Cal HFA's traditional programs, they're 3.5% down, and to leaps and bounds to 20%. What if we did 10% and helped twice as many people? And not to say that the 20% wasn't needed or helpful. It was just like, whoa. I get it. And I get the concept of no mortgage insurance, but also with conventional loans, it's a sliding scale on mortgage insurance. At 10% down with good credit, it might be less than $100 a month. So it's not a huge fee even to have that if you do.
Yeah.
So anyways.
I think all of those are really, we just have to have more incentivization to purchase homes.
Yeah.
Right? We just have to.
Yeah. Something to help get over that initial hump. And then once you're in, it's, you're in, and again, it's a growing asset and, long-term for net wealth and net worth.
And Greg, you probably run into this all the time, that consumers are completely flabbergasted that they don't have to have 20% down to purchase a home.
They still have that misnomer of like, what? I don't have to, you don't.
Exactly. So there are ways. It's just a matter of jumping in, getting your feet wet and getting knowledgeable about it.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of off the cuff here. I've got a few. I reached out to a friend that is not in real estate. He owns a few rentals, and he's a very sharp guy. So shout out to Daniel. And I was like, hey, give me some questions of, just a homeowner,
Great,
consumer.
I'm on the hot seat.
No, it's the fun hot seat. And it was like, he assumes many homeowners have unrealistic expectations of what they can sell their homes for. How do you tackle that conversation to help create a realistic listing price?
Okay, so this is a great question because it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether the house sold a year ago or 6 months ago, the house down the street, everybody is comparing their house to that sale.
The
right?
top sale.
the top sale.
Yes.
And sellers, myself included, we tend to be blind because we love our homes so much.
We're biased.
We have that seller bias.
Yes.
Ours is the best. And we don't always equate what our home is to what the general public may be looking for in a home. Just because it suits us doesn't mean it suits everybody, right? So I think one of the best conversations I've ever had is like, what is the motivation for selling? Let's break this cost differential down to cups of coffee a day at Starbucks.
Yeah.
And qualify it that way. But also, do you want to sell your house or your neighbor's house? Because if there are two houses on the market and one is priced at X and you're sticking to this price, this is an excellent reason that house is going to sell, all things being considered, but not yours.
Yeah. The stubborn seller, and I'm gonna call you out, and I have a recent example of a client that and it's true, if you price your home too high off the bat, you're going to be forced into sitting on the market longer, and you're going to be forced to price cuts, and ultimately you're going to devalue your home, in my opinion, because you want to sell it for $1 million. Realistically, it's worth $950. you listed at $1 million, you're going to be cutting down to 925. And so I see that, and a lot of all the contracts are, come across my desk. I don't get to go see the homes in person per se.
But you see the appraisals.
I see the appraisals and I see the negotiations, the counters back and forth and things like that. And so I think, part of being a real estate salesperson, realtor, is you're a professional. And so you're asking a professional their advice of what to list it for. You should follow their guidance.
Well, any real estate professional is going to sit down with what we call the comparables.
Yeah.
Factual data of the neighborhood, in some instances, apples to apples, because a lot of our homes are in tracts.
Yeah.
Apples to apples of what has sold in the neighborhood. And if things are staying on the market a little bit longer, maybe the prices are going to come down a little. It depends. What does the seller want to do? Do you want to have that ego boost of the most expensive home on the market? Because there probably will be a buyer for that, but just how long is that going to take? What's your why?
Yeah.
Do you want to move by a certain time? Do you have a job change? These are all factors, and it's our job to kind of just navigate and point the ship in the right direction. Mr. and Mrs. Seller,
Yeah.
what is the most important thing for you at this point?
Yeah.
Do you want to be in your home here by X date so you can enjoy a shorter commute, so you can be closer to family? What is the goal? And let's step backwards. I'm going to give you recommendations on how to best stage your home so it looks like all of the magazines.
Right.
In some cases, maybe we will professionally stage it. I'm going to get the photographer in here and make it look gorgeous. And that's going to be, and I'm going to get all the real estate professionals in here. That's how I am going to best sell your house. I'm going to market it and make people believe that when they buy your home, their life is going to change for the better, right? That's my job.
Yeah.
But also I'm giving you this data here,
Yeah.
and I'm not making it up because it's right here.
Right.
I'm pointing to the facts.
Yeah.
So let's have a conversation.
Yeah. So sellers, be open-minded, listen to the professionals. That's the takeaway.
Yeah. But also make sure that your professionals are doing all of those marketing things
Oh, of
for
course.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What are some of the challenges realtors experience when dealing with lenders that you wish would improve?
Communication.
Okay.
100%. It is, I think for so long, there wasn't this open communication between lenders and real estate, the realtors. It was kind of everybody was behind hidden doors and you let me do my job. I'm the expert in this area. And, sometimes when things have come through to the mortgage lenders and then they go to underwriting, there's kind of this no man's land. Like, we don't know what the underwriter is going to do or say,
Sure.
right? With these particular, every situation is different. Every buyer's financial situation is different, right? And we have a lot less W-2 employees now, which makes lending much more difficult.
Especially in this area.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially in this area. So I think communication and expectations up front about what is going to be needed, the lenders being proactive. Oh, I saw this last time when I had this kind of a loan. I think we need to do X, Y, and Z to be proactive on that. Those are things I always look for in lenders as opposed to being reactive, because reactive, that's always in the middle of the transaction.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the communication. People not, you guys can't see me on the podcast, but pointing fingers,
Oh, goodness.
Like, oh no, it's their fault. It's their fault, and I think it just needs, everybody's on the same boat. Let's get to the port.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Communication is always key. And that's not just in transactions, that's in relationships. That's my wife and I, hey, communication is key, especially for lenders. And as I've, gotten more and more experience, I've been a lot more proactive in that, even down to, picking up the phone to the listing agent. Like, I'm going to order the appraisal. Are you ready? I mean, you wouldn't believe I still have some appraisals come back without smoke and carbon detectors and things like that. And it's like, when you're listing a home, that should be things that you're looking at and taking care of.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize that in the contract it says if there has to be a reappraisal for these items, then it is the seller that pays for that reappraisal, right?
Yeah.
Did the sellers know that? Are you
Right.
having the conversation with your clients about that, about being ready, because it's going to cost the sellers more money?
Yeah. No, that's definitely a great one. Okay. And if someone only had $5,000 to $10,000 to spend to prepare their house to sell, what would you recommend spending to get the best return? It's not a lot of money, but
Packing things up, decluttering, and maybe freshening up paint.
yeah,
And cleaning.
yes,
If you can't afford anything else, either doing it yourself or getting somebody in there to do a deep clean, because cleaning and really kind of indicates the care of a property. And I always tell my buyers, I'm like, look, this property looks like it's been maintained really well.
yeah,
That's a good sign. If those things haven't been taken care of, we can expect other things to be going south.
right, yeah,
So
yeah. No, that's a simple one, but it's also like sellers need to visualize, a buyer, and they're going to go look at homes. And so when you want to see your furniture in that home, you want to have it open that it seems larger and, more comfortable. They can envision it.
well, that turquoise blue that you painted the bathroom that you thought was going to be this great Mediterranean feel, that might not be everybody's idea of Zen.
Exactly.
Right? So it is the real estate professional's job to kind of let people know, hey, we could change this very quickly and cheaply
Yeah.
to attract more people. There could be one person out there who loves it, but there may also be more people who it's not their cup of tea.
Right. And for listing, you want to go, I don't want to say bland. We just don't want to go bold, right? You want to attract to the masses, and, the more people that are interested in your home also brings more buyers and hopefully a better sales price.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Awesome. Wow. We've been rambling on here over an hour. We're 72 minutes in. So with that, I don't want to keep you much longer. We've spoken A to Z. Is there anything I haven't discussed that you'd like to chat about?
I think we pretty much covered a lot of topics. Like
We had some great topics.
Yeah, I mean, we could
loved
chat
it.
forever just about different real estate things.
Yeah.
But no, I think that we brought some things that are coming down the pike. It's been great.
Awesome. Well, I sure appreciate it. If any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, how do they find you?
Cami Pinsak across all the socials, and my phone number is so easy to find me. I'm the only person with my name on the entire planet. But 805-217-7611.
Awesome. Thank you. Cami, thank you for being here today. Listeners, thank you for continuing to listen in. Make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode. This is Greg Abrams on G Money, real talk on everything mortgages and real estate. We're out. Thank you. Oh, that was so good.
Well, I thought we were going to be doing much more in depth with the laws, and so I was like,